What's up, everybody? Jason from Jason's Exotic Reptiles. Today, I'm going to go into my story and how I turned my passion into a real business. I'm going to skip how I actually got the passion for reptiles and dive kind of right into when I got my reptile and where it evolved. Is when I was young, I got my first boa, and I was just passionate about reptiles in general. I got a couple ball pythons, a few colubrids, but at the time, I wasn't really focused on breeding. It was just buying things that I liked. I had a green tree python, blue-tongued skinks, some blood pythons, and at the time they were wild caught, were not fun to deal with. But at some point, my mother said, well, I'm not paying for these feeders anymore. So it got me thinking, well, how do I take this and pay for itself? And at that point, I was, maybe 12 years old or so. And I started thinking, well, now I need to maybe rearrange. If I buy a male and a female, I could breed them and I could take the babies and sell the babies and I could pay for the feeders. And that's really what got things started. So I bought some pairs. My first pair, I think, was a pair of coastal carpets or jungle carpet pythons. And epic fail. I did not breed them. I didn't know what I was doing. I was a little 12-year-old kid that had no idea. At that time, I was maybe 13 or so. And eventually, I just took a liking to boas. And I had a boa, and I decided, well, let me get another female boa. But at the same time, they had wild-caught gravid ball pythons coming from the wild. I think you can still buy them. So I bought a wild-caught gravid. I think it was a wild-caught gravid ghost ball python. I think I paid $800 for it. I was super excited, checked the cage every day. She finally laid eggs for me, and I had an incubator set up. It was just a hover baiter at the time, which if you don't know what it is, you can look it up. I don't even know if they're still made. It's a terrible incubator setup. It's like a styrofoam box with a heat coil on the top. And I put the eggs in there. I got the hatch right. I put the eggs in there. And within maybe a week to a week and a half, those eggs were all shriveled up, dried. I still let them run out the whole cycle because I had no idea what I was doing. And it was an epic fail. I just completely failed at breeding, even hatching the eggs. But I was super excited to get the eggs. I thought it was very cool. I think it was 5 or 6 eggs in there. And at that point, I said, okay, I'm doing something wrong. I then realized that eggs need humidity, which I should have realized. But as a 12 or 13-year-old kid, there really wasn't good access to internet. There really weren't books about breeding reptiles. And the overall resource of how to do this properly just were not there. There was no resource to figure this out. So over time, I just kind of kept acquiring different pairs of animals. I sold the carpet pythons. I sold them, and I got a pair of rainbow boas, another boa constrictor. And then I actually had success breeding baby boas. And I was like, this is incredible. This is so cool. And I actually bought a pair of Borneo blood pythons that I also had success with breeding, and not only breeding, but then fully hatching the babies because I learned how to incubate eggs properly. I built a little bit of a different incubator. I used a wine cooler or like a little mini fridge, and that passion just went crazy from there because I now had babies. I encountered this challenge of, well, how do I sell these things? And at the time, we didn't have the shipping companies we have now. So I just shipped regular UPS. It was probably not legal at the time, at least from the UPS standards. It was legal, but probably violated their standards. But I would pack this snake up in an old pillowcase and I'd ship it to somebody that I found me on a Craigslist post. And just Facebook wasn't around. The social media we have today and the platforms for selling wasn't around. So the reptile industry's evolved so much to help breeders really actually sell our products. So got them, shipped them, and I got paid and made money. I think they actually mailed me cash in the mail, and then I shipped them their snake, which was a really weird transaction for like a 13, 14-year-old kid. But I was successful at it, and it started this whole passion. Now, that just kind of continued, and obviously the platforms to sell animals and the information became more readily available on the internet, where I started buying now pairs of boas. I was breeding ball pythons. I think I went up and I spent $8,000 on a Mojave and a pastel ball python. It was a pair. I think the Mojave was 6,000 and the pastel was 2,000. And at the time, I was trying to make pastel Mojaves. Nobody made them before. It was just a brand new thing. They had pastels, they had Mojaves. They didn't have pastel Mojaves. We didn't know what they were going to look like as ball pythons. Knew they would be cool. And I was not successful with it. Those snakes actually didn't end up living. Over time, I didn't know what I was doing. They ended up getting respiratory infections and dying, but the boas started to take off where I made successful babies with boas. And that was like, man, the passion was now flying. Was I making money? Probably not as much as I thought I was. At the time, I was like, this is crazy. I just made $1,000 selling normal boas. I would go to the local pet store to sell my litters to them. They were just normals. They weren't morphs at the time. And I continued to evolve and eventually take that money and either put it in the bank or I would buy more snakes with it, more cages. I was using hand-built racks that I built, and my father would help me or somebody who I knew would help cut the wood. And I didn't even have a car at this time, so it was all relying on other people to help me build this stuff and to help me buy this stuff. I was very fortunate to have that at a young age, the support structure of people who were willing to help and wanted to help, wanted to watch me grow into whatever business this could be. But I knew in the back of my head, no matter what people would tell me, this could be a viable business. And I certainly had many people telling me, this is a terrible business, you're never going to make this work, and there's no business here. But I knew there was a business because I was buying reptiles and I saw other people buying reptiles. So there had to be something. I just had to figure out what that something was, what that approach was. So it just continued to evolve where I then got some Burmese pythons, and I didn't really get into colubrids until later on, but eventually got into colubrids and different African house snakes and corn snakes and milk snakes. And I was just having fun with it. It was a passion. But at some point, the thing switched, and I said, well, now I'm making profit. And this happened before I actually established Jason's Exotic Reptiles, before it was just me, Jason Raimondi, selling to random people on the internet through, at the time, I think it was now kingsnake.com, which I think is obsolete. It's still a website, but I don't know of anybody who uses it. I know there's still people that have accounts, and I'll occasionally go to visit it, but it's a horrible platform for posting compared to what we have today. There was Fauna Classified, which I would use often. I believe Fauna Classified is still around. It's a very archaic system. Even at least about 6 months ago, I checked it. It's still a terrible system, but it worked. It worked to get our animals to people who knew that that's the place to look. So it just continued to evolve in this direction to the point where now I was making income off of it and I was paying taxes. I'm saying, well, I wasn't tracking any expenses. It was just I made money and now I have to pay the government money from the money I made. I'm saying this doesn't make any sense. So in 2016, I converted it to Jason's Exotic Reptiles, which was actually the business entity that I still am today. And at that point, I really started to nail down my income and my expenses. I was a little older at that point. But this was all happening behind the scenes for many, many years before I actually started Jason's Exotic Reptiles. And at that point, I did it out of necessity because I needed the tax write-offs in order to offset my profits. And it was great because I really focused on where my money is going and how much I'm actually left at the end of the year. It really wasn't until that point that I completely switched and said, well, the money I'm making is not the money I think I'm making, because I started tracking my expenses. And I started doing that on purpose because I didn't want to pay taxes on money that was actually going towards an expense. And that continued and continued. And eventually my profits started to offset from what my losses were. And now I really honed into my expenses. And I'm still honing my expenses now, because the more expenses I have, real expenses, the less I have as actual profit and the less I really need to pay towards taxes. So it all revolved around a necessity to build the business because I didn't want to pay taxes on income that I was actually making. And at the time it was $30,000-$40,000 and I needed some write-offs. So it was actually a viable business, and what somebody made that today, they'd probably be very, very happy. But it took me years to get to that point, and it started truly as a hobby that I needed to pay for itself into a business, and I still consider it more of a hobby-based business, is that if I made no income, I couldn't keep the amount of animals I have because there's a lot of expenses with what I have, a lot of overhead. My overhead is probably $60,000 to $70,000 plus every year just to feed, heat, just maintain the animals, buying new animals, buying the supplies for the animals. So that continued to grow, but so didn't my profit. And when I started tracking my profit and my losses, it really continued to help me evolve and figure out what direction I need to go in, what's selling, building the customer databases, building the customer relationships. All of this evolved into what Jason's Exotic Reptiles is today. It wasn't until, I want to say 2017, 2018, I was actually on Facebook and I said, I'm going to make a YouTube channel. And everybody told me that's the most ridiculous idea ever. You should not create a YouTube channel. It's going to fail. I mean, really like mean comments. Like, how about good luck or something like that? And it kind of see a different side of the community where everybody wanted me to fail. They did not want me to have a successful YouTube channel. And I just did it because I didn't care. Really, I started the YouTube channel out of necessity because I was answering the same exact questions every day to different people. And that's where it started. I wanted to create some place where I could send the video to somebody, to a customer, say, hey, answer your questions in this video. If you have more questions after you watch it, feel free to reach out. And that just continued to evolve into something that I enjoyed doing. If you follow me from when I started the channel, you know I didn't post on a schedule or any type of frequency. It was kind of as the questions came in, I would respond to them. Sometimes that was 3 videos a week. Sometimes that was a video every 3 months or longer. So that's how the channel evolved. But to where it is today, it's really grown into something that has given me a lifestyle, a hobby, a community of people that I would not take back in a second. Now, if I could start it over again, I would certainly do things differently. If you guys want to see if I started over video, definitely drop a link or drop a comment down below. I'm happy to go into that video. I've done something like that, but there's almost 2 aspects. If I started over with no reputation, and if I started over with my current reputation, what I would do. Those are 2 totally different scenarios, but I'm happy to dive into those videos. So I hope this gives you a little backstory on me, and hope you guys enjoy it. Tell me, do you relate to this at all? Is there a component of this video that resonated with you? Until next video, let's keep it moving.